Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here today with my friend Marco Maggiore, SYCN Auto Logistics. Marco, what's going on today? How you doing?
Ben, how you doing? Good to see you again, my friend. Been too long, so I'm glad we get a chance to connect.
Yeah, it's been a minute, man. I tell you what, dude, we used to run into each other at all the conferences and all the trade shows and everything. And, I'd be like bored at my booth and I'd come over and like hang out at yours and like we talk about shoes and like where we're going for dinner and like all chop it up a little bit and everything. And, I miss that, man.
I do too. I mean, we've gone, I don't want to date us or anything, right? We're starting to get in that day, starting to date our age a little bit, but definitely remember all that really fondly, right? Some really fun conversations, part of that kind of reload camaraderie that people have. And you and I kind of cut our teeth around the same time. So it's good to definitely catch up again.
Yeah, there's definitely a camaraderie to like having to work the expo hall, right? Where
That's
you're
right.
setting up next to somebody, they're breaking down next to you. You're like sweating your face off right before you're like ready to go. Sometimes you see somebody over here, their butts hanging out over here. They're trying to put their booth together. You're just like you really get to know people, when you're over here setting up a trade show booth together.
You
It's
do. I mean, inevitably something's going to be missing. Something didn't come in.
yeah,
Some
can I
poor
borrow
guy's
your
trying to
tape?
set up by
You know,
himself.
you got an extra fish
Yeah.
bowl over there for business cards, like.
Right. It's a battleground, man. Absolutely. It's not for the weak heart, those, pre-show setups. Absolutely.
Seriously, get in the comments, y'all. Hit that like button. Let me know what your fondest trade show memory was, or if you had a favorite show or something like that. Get in there. Um, we got Krista checking in here. Hey, friends. What's up, Krista? Good to see you. Let us know where you are, where you're coming in from here. I got my phone volume on. This is great. Total amateur. Rob Zeitz checking in from Cambridge, Mass. Wicked Smart, Cambridge, Mass. Karen Gerba checking in. Hi from Pittsburgh. Karen's on your team, huh?
Karen is. Karen's awesome. I mean, Karen is our road warrior. She does a great job getting out there. Infectious personality, if you know Karen. So, yeah, blessed to have Karen on our team for sure.
Yeah, shout out to Karen. Karen's one of the reasons this show happened. She's like, we got to get Marco on. We're going to talk about fraud. It's going to be great. I'm like, all right, Karen, we're going to do it. I'd never been so happy about fraud. I tell you what. Honestly, she got me so jazzed. Rob Zeitz saying being conference buddies with the booths next to you is key to a successful event. Totally, you can swap leads and everything for sure. Yeah, and hey, everybody, you see down below there is a ticker going right now, as you can read as it's going by. Which way is it going by? That way. Win the ultimate trip to Washington, D.C. I got to plug this before me and Marco get started. Go to glomo.com/DC. Don't go right now because we're kind of doing something, but go later or go on another device or something like that. Glomo.com/DC. We're doing a VIP getaway weekend with 2 nights, 2 airfare tickets, plane tickets to DC, and 2 tickets to the Washington Commanders game, any home game of your choosing. We got a suite there. It's going to be amazing. All the food and beverage you want. We're going to be going down on the field. We got field passes. It's going to be amazing. Actually, one of our team members was there. We had a whole bunch of people there when the Commanders beat the Bears in that little snafu that happened at the
Dude, why are
last
you
second
bringing this up? Why are
this
you
last
bringing
year.
this up?
I just
I'm a
recalled.
Bears fan.
So let me tell you, you know what's funny? I know you're a Bears fan, that's why I'm picking on you. Can I tell you? So we had people that went there and they had the field passes. That guy, I forget the safety. You know the safety that made that boneheaded play that wasn't covering the guy?
He basically was waving, hey, game over. And then next thing, it's over his head. And the game is over, and it happened the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy was on the sidelines taking pictures with our crew down there. Our people were down there taking selfies, and he was like photobombing their selfies. So like his head wasn't in the game the entire game. I mean, that's the scouting report.
Not good,
So
man.
be
Yeah.
a part of history. Come join. Get a part of this cool giveaway we're doing here. Lake Smith, hi from the Boca office. What's up, Boca?
Yeah, Lake. Lake's one of our great sales guys. Our corporates in Boca and love going down there. Lake's an awesome guy. So another infectious personality, right? It's kind of a theme here at Ship Your Car Now.
Yeah, you do got some personalities, that's for sure. Get in the comments here. We're gonna be talking about auto shipping. We're gonna be talking about fraud too, because this like is really a big deal, y'all. It is really a big deal. I'm not just exaggerating. I mean, I've been hearing about this, within our industry, within autos. I'm hearing about this in the general freight and commodities world as well. Marco's going to kind of peel back the curtain, pull the curtain back on some of this stuff. This is going to be good. Let's see, Jesse Silva checking in from Florida. What's up, Jesse? Yeah, Jesse was one of my first customers in this business when he was with MSI back in the day. What's up, Jesse? Daisy checking in from Glomo HQ. What's up? Yeah, let's get into it, Marco. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on in terms of fraud, though. I've been hearing about it. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so, interesting for me is that I'll kind of give you a little bit of, backstory because it's absolutely going to run parallel is before I got into the relocation and auto logistics space, I used to work in the identity theft protection realm.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, our clients were, banks and credit unions and hospitals and government agencies. And we were brought in because their concern is that, there would be someone that would be looking to hack into their system, right? Data breach and steal information. And they spent millions of dollars trying to shore up and make sure that they were protected. And what we found across the board almost is that they weren't really the weak spot, right? I mean, you think when you think of hacking, kind of think of movies like Mission Impossible and other ones where there's someone clacking
the
away
knock
and
list, yeah.
hey, we're in, and now suddenly they're in there and all the files are in there. But those guys did a really good job of getting their systems secure. The weakness, though, Ben, or the security flaw was the endpoint, which in their case was customers. So it's people using their systems. So people who were accessing banking files through their phone or through their computer that picked up a virus or were hacked, hackers are able to get in there, get their credentials, and then suddenly these hackers have the ability to get in their system and manipulate their data, steal money or what have you.
Will you know, let me ask you, will you know if you've been compromised?
So you really don't find out until after the fact, which is really what the crux of the issue is, right? In the relocation space and our space, what we're finding is similarly the same thing, is that these load boards or TMS, transportation management systems, that suppliers, auto transport companies use, they're pretty secure. But again, it's that endpoint, the actual drivers or the actual auto transport companies that we work with, that we dispatch loads to, they get hacked into. And then once a hacker or scammer has their information, they're able to go in there and either set up fake profiles, change information on loads, basically the same type of approach that I saw all those years back in that kind of banking and financial landscape has really found its way into the logistics space now. So that's why it's so important to understand what the risks are and to start putting some things proactively in, because really the danger lies in with all the different layers that are involved, right? Technology is awesome. It does great things. It helps us with our lives to make things easier. Information is, conveyed a lot quicker, but there are those gaps in security that pose some threats. So that's kind of an overall, if that made sense, what I saw all those years back in that financial sector. That same principle is being used today in the logistics space, not only for autos, but for freight as well.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I want to talk about some of the different types of scams and things that you've seen. I might need some ideas. The holidays are coming up. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. Hey, shout out to Jack Jampel. Hello, gentlemen. What's up, Jack? Jack had a really cool call earlier. A whole bunch of folks joined. Jack, how many people joined that call? Highly recommend it. Dolly, hi, Marco and Ben from St. George, Utah.
Hey, Dolly.
What's up, Dolly? Hosea, look at you get a little testimonial, Marco.
That's strong. Coming from Hosea, that's strong, man. That's like testimonial plus right there. So I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Yeah, Hosea is one of my favorite people in this business, and he was the first person that believed in me and believed in Glomo and supported us when I started my business. So, his testimonial carries a lot of weight with me, I'll tell you that. Thank you, Jose. I appreciate you. Get in the comments here if you guys have experienced any kind of fraud, or any kind of scams in our business. If you've seen scams perpetrated against transferees unwittingly, let me know what you've seen out there. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Jack says 120 people were on there. Very cool. Yeah, super cool. Let me ask you, Marco, about some of the different types of scams you've seen. Well, I'm sorry. Before we get into this, I want to explain, because there's some people out there who don't actually know how cars are moved, right? So I think it'd be kind of cool just to talk like from a pure process standpoint. Like how does that work?
Yeah. No, so in our space, I'll kind of focus on relocation, right? Is that generally most providers in this space are something called asset light, which means we don't physically own our own trucks or drivers. We rely on partner carriers that we have relationships with that we then will basically dispatch that load out to. Couple different models. We have some folks in the space that are 100% broker model, where you book an auto with them. They'll post it on a job board or a load board. They'll find a carrier. They'll go ahead and dispatch that load to the carrier. We're more of an auto transport management model, to where we have carriers that we have direct contractual relationships with, but it's the same type of general theory, right? Is that we are going to go ahead and use people in our network to safely move that vehicle. And like I said, the main issue is that folks who are only relying on those load boards to basically pick the number of carriers they're working with, there is very little vetting that's going on in those load boards, Ben. If you're working with a provider and that provider on their website or part of their marketing pitch is, hey, we have a network of 10,000 carriers that we work with. Oh yeah, we have 12,000 we work with. We'll up that, we have 15,000 we work with.
Yeah.
What that means is that the accumulation of those load boards or ways that they use to try and find carriers has that number of registered carriers. But as I mentioned, there's extremely little to any vetting going on.
That's super interesting. So what you're saying is the more carriers folks work with, the less vetting is able to be done, most likely.
Yeah, I think to the level that really you should have it in today's day and age. We, instead of working with tens of thousands of carriers, we have hundreds that we work with. And that 100 allows us to serve all our clients. We certainly, anyone that works with us knows that we do, coast to coast. We do intra and inter Canada. We do both open and enclosed, boats, RVs. If it's a vehicle, we can move it. But because we have these close relationships with these vetted carriers, it tends to lead to a better product, in our opinion. And it gives us the opportunity to vet them a lot more thoroughly than just simply saying, yeah, we're going to use this carrier, right? Kind of the old thumb in the wind analysis. If they're registered on the load board, we're going to give it to them, right? It's kind of, I refer to it as the hope and pray methodology, is that you hope that you find a good carrier and that they're going to do the job. But that is kind of where the weakness is for what I said in the beginning, Ben, which is there really isn't a way to know whether any of these carriers are A, legitimate and not fraudsters who are pretending to be a carrier, someone that might double broker, or someone that might have a leak in their system to where someone is fraudulently in there and manipulating data. So
talk to me about, what does double brokering mean, real quick, for people that aren't
Yep.
familiar with that term.
So real quick for us is, if we dispatch a load to a carrier, it's going to be a carrier who has equipment that's going to go there and pick it up, right? So I dispatch a load to Ben Cross Trucking. I expect you, Ben, and your employees and your trucks and your drivers to go pick that up, as opposed to you then double brokering that and brokering that to someone else who ultimately is going to service that customer. Double brokerage is a big no-no in our industry. And there are some folks who are fraudulently trying to pass themselves along as legitimate asset-based carriers. But in essence, they're just brokers who are going to pass that on to another level of a carrier.
Get in the comments here. This is fascinating to me. Ask your questions. I've never, I don't want to say never, I haven't taken a deep dive like this into auto shipping in quite some time. So kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of it, the tactics, and kind of some of the stuff that's going on. Jake says cargo theft is up 400% year over year. 400%.
Yeah, and just to put a number behind that, that's about $500 million, but that's only reported theft instances. The estimates are that unreported instances could really be pushing that number excess of $1 billion plus per year. In the United States alone, between 2023 and 2024, there was a 50% jump in fraudulent activity. So, this has not been someone in your parents' garage that is trying to mess around. These are professional criminal organizations who have some, unfortunately, very smart people who are posing as fraudsters out there, and they are really a step ahead of traditional vetting methodologies.
This reminds me of the 60s and the 70s when the gangsters, the mobsters would say, "Oh, I fell off the truck." Like they're over here committing cargo crime. It feels like we've had to take it a step back in time when people are knocking off freight trucks here. Andrea Douglas says hi from Connecticut. Got a nutmegger in the house. Hey, Andrea, how's it going? Jack Jampel, at a high level, what does the vetting include?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, unfortunately, what was the kind of industry standard, and this is such a great question, Jack, is that the main thing I want people to take away from our chat today, Ben, is that if you are a corporate, if you are a RMC, if you are a mover, you really should be reaching out to suppliers in your network and asking them specifically, what does your vetting look like? Not only should they be able to answer that, but they also should be able to physically show you how that works, right? What are red flags that come up in their system? How are they identified of this? What are the proactive steps that they are taking? I certainly can't speak for everyone in the industry, but we have made the decision earlier this year that we are going to put significant spend and resources into taking our vetting process to the next level. For us, there are a couple different ways that we are concerned about fraud. One is going to be for folks who are impersonating carriers in our network. They're not really a value carrier. We have upped it to the point to where our system now actually not only looks at their information as far as their insurance to make sure their insurance is correct, but we also make sure that their assigned drivers and their assigned trucks are actually listed out on their COI, because just because they say they have insurance, if the assigned driver or truck that they're using isn't specifically listed on there, you could be in a bad situation if an issue happens.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just interject real quick, and I want to hear the rest of this vetting stuff. But selling household goods for my whole career, providing the name and the photo of the driver that was coming to the home was always kind of the top tier service. It was done so that the transferee would have a comfort level that Jim is coming to the home. This is what Jim looks like. This is Jim's background. Maybe you include a little bio, right? Because he's going to be in the home for a couple days. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I was including a picture of Jim because Bob might show up and try to snag the shipment, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will definitely get to that in a second, because that is something that we've implemented as well. As far as, remember what I said to open up is that the weakness is through the endpoint. So that transferee, right, that person who's physically releasing the vehicle, they stand as a line of defense against, cargo theft. And to your point, Ben, is, hey, if you order an Uber, right, an Uber or a Lyft, how do you know when that car pulls up that's the right car that you should be getting into?
Yeah.
They show you, this is the driver, this is the car, this is the license. So,
and he says, "Are you Ben?" And I say, "Yeah, I'm Ben. Are you Jim?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm Jim." I'm like, "You sure?" And then I get in the car.
Right. So, one of the things that we have recently started to implement is that we are actually providing those transferees with the picture, the name, the description of the truck, so that when that individual pulls up, they are able to know that is, hey, this is the correct person to release my car to. You think about that transferee and all the millions of things they have going on between their household goods, trying to get their job lined up, if they're moving or what have you. Sometimes if someone shows up and they just have their information, and let's say they receive that information fraudulently, and they show up, say, hey, Ben, I'm here to load your Mercedes. You'd be like, all right, awesome. Let's check this off the list. Here's the keys. Let's get this done without
That's how I
actually
lost
knowing
my
that that's
last
right there.
Mercedes, Marco. I mean, I'll
I
be
know,
honest with
man.
you.
You're on
That's
the
why I don't
what,
have a
four or
Mercedes
five?
now. People just keep taking my Mercedes. You know, it's so funny though, because I valet park a lot, you know. And I hand my keys to somebody, and just because they're wearing a black polo shirt and standing on the corner, I just think, oh, here you go, buddy. And I think about it, like, I kind of every once in a while, I'm just like, what if like that wasn't the valet? Like, how much does it cost to make a polo shirt that says valet on it? And I just handed my car to dude.
And Ben, as simplistic as that sounds, that's what happens in some of these cases. Is that I'm going to throw a shout out to one of our folks, Michelle Hutchinson. Michelle, if you're watching, we just had an incident with one of our clients. It was on the dealership side, and because we're proactive with sending out this information to the dealership, they had a driver show up who said, "I'm here to pick up this car." He had paperwork that showed information that made sense as far as where it was being picked up and delivered, but it wasn't the driver that we had hired to go pick up that
So what
car.
was going on then? What was he trying to do?
Well, what likely happened is that he probably was able to break into a system somewhere, saw that this vehicle was on a board for picking up in Chicago, let's say, going down to Dallas. He saw it was a high valued vehicle. So what he did was send a malicious driver out there to get the vehicle loaded, to show, paperwork to make the customer think that this is the right person to release my car to.
Because he had enough
When
data points. He had the origin, he had the
That's right.
destination, he had the
And
make and
again,
model,
you're
so
in
he
a
could kind of,
rush. You
yeah,
have customers in your showroom at a
yeah,
dealership. You want to get this car out of your hair,
right.
but the person was able to look at the information we sent them and realize that it wasn't the right assigned driver, and that individual stopped that fraud from happening because one of the important parts in our industry for auto transporters, in my opinion, is we need to start having that transparency level with not only the folks we work with on the RMC side, but with the transferees as well, right?
I
It
don't
used
hear
to be,
anybody
yeah,
talking about this, Marco. I think this is so fascinating. Because then my next question, I got people checking in here. Mike Quigley, shout out to Mike Quigley. Rob Zaitchek, shout out to you. Michelle Silva, great point there. I'll get to that in a second. Get in the comments. Let me know who you are, where you are. Get in the comments. Let us know what you think about fraud. If you have any stories for us. But Marco, whose fault is it? If I hand over my G Wagon keys to somebody who had like a couple of points, good data points on there, and I say, here you go, buddy. I mean, I kind of feel like I just gave him my car. Like I mean, I know he's a criminal, so but I mean, who do I hold responsible for that?
yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, that customer is going to turn to us and hold us responsible, right? Because we're servicing that move for them. We're certainly going to have communication with our assigned drivers, but for us, it's being proactive because again, those transferees are on the front line. So if we provide them information and be transparent with them about who's coming to pick up their car, they can serve as that line of defense. If all the other fail safes up to there, don't work. For us, some of the scary things that happen and some of the things we actually check with is that we want to make sure that anyone who is requesting a car from us, the phone number that comes in for that request, that email, that name of the individual lines up with people we know are established with that company. So it's going beyond just, hey, these guys are on a load board, I'm going to give this to them. We check so many data points that we actually have the ability that if someone calls in with a number to request a vehicle from us, our technology will pop up and say, this number is associated with 10 other companies. That's going to be a huge flag for us because
Yeah,
that's probably a fraudster. I mean, that's beyond
yeah.
what anyone's doing right now. Same thing with emails. Same thing with driver's licenses. I saw someone in the chat say, hey, we request VIN numbers. We certainly do that too, but we also request pictures of their trucks. So if people send in pictures of their trucks and we notice it's a stock image that you could find by Googling online, that's going to get flagged.
So you immediately hit that Google reverse image search, and if it's like a, if it's a stock image, Getty Images or something like that, you're like, wait.
That's right. The other thing we make sure of too is that they need to have their MC number and information that's on their truck professionally, as opposed to a piece of paper that's duct taped on that truck. So we require the driver to take a picture of themselves by their truck with their MC number there. And if anything starts to look fraudulent to us, we absolutely will refuse to dispatch to that driver. So there are criteria that go all the way from how the MC number is displayed on the truck to, are there any records historically of this phone number being used anywhere else? I mean, we are so hyper alert of what this information comes in as. Our system will flag things, and that's what we use to actually ensure that we are working with legitimate folks who handle cars for our customers.
All right, get in the comments here. I want to hear your questions about fraud, how to stop fraud, if you've seen it, if you've experienced it either in your personal life or professionally, if you've had transferees who have been on the bad end of something like this. I'm really curious out there. Rob Zeit says, sorry if I missed this, but when a person is suspicious or unsure about the pickup person, what steps should they take? How should they say no to the pickup person, and are they legally allowed to shoot them? Rob, that's a great question. Marco, thoughts?
Yeah, so the first thing is that transferee or that end customer has the right to refuse to let that driver load that vehicle. The next thing they should do, which happened in this example we mentioned, is to give us an immediate call, because we're going to start the process of figuring out how this guy got the information. We're going to reach out to the actual carrier that was assigned. But the thing to know with those transferees is that they are empowered to refuse to release that car to a driver. They don't have to, agree to release it. And their very first call should be to us. It's one of the first things we counsel all of our transferees. If any information that gets passed to you directly by the driver differentiates from anything we've shared with you, immediately call us, because we're there to help out.
By the way, I'm just gonna say something. This is why it's so important for service providers to be able to talk to the transferees out there, because this is like the type of deep, master's level knowledge that even I, as a household goods shipping relocation expert, like I wouldn't even know to think about this stuff. So unless Marco and his team or somebody else like Mark, is out there talking to you, they're not going to know to counsel you on it. So it's like, I worry sometimes that we put too many barriers between the experts and the transferee, and then we lose a lot in translation.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ben. And we always say we're there to counsel, we're there to educate. There's a lot of nuances that go on in the auto transport space that differentiate themselves even from household goods, right? People look at it as, hey, big truck A pulls up, big truck B pulls up, but there's a lot of differentiation between how those trucks operate and what the process is. So we always encourage, our ability to try and, educate people, because education is the first line of defense, right? Just as we try and be transparent with people about who to expect, we also try and be transparent so they know what to expect when that driver shows up.
Yeah, really, really good point there. Get in the comments here. I want to hear, what stories have you had about fraud, either happening to you or on a shipment maybe that you've had, or to one of, to a transferee that you've encountered or something you've heard. Really curious. I think this is a really interesting topic. Mike Quigley says, I was out doing an on-site manager role. VIP car got shipped, and the driver showed up with an oversized horse trailer converted. My customer laughed and said, not happening. Mike, what kind of car was it? Just kind of curious. I'm really curious about that. What kind of equipment, everything's not going enclosed, obviously, right?
No,
So,
I mean, there are different variations of trailer, right? You see those big trailers that you might see on the highway that are carrying, 8+ cars on them. A full-size, hard-sided enclosed transporter normally can hold 6, but there's smaller variations as well. I'm not sure if I've ever heard of a horse trailer pulling up to load a car, so probably kudos to that customer for not letting his car get on that. But there are different types of, equipment used. And again, that goes back to what we just said, Ben, is we're going to show them this is what that trailer will look like. So if there's any sort of, question, they'll be able to say, yep, looks like that. License plate matches up. MC number matches up. Picture of the driver matches up. I feel good. This is the right guy I should be releasing my car to.
Rob Zeitz actually would tell you that they brought a horse trailer because the car had a lot of horsepower.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was a classic Jag.
That's nice.
Like a little XJ8, little XJ6. All right, Mike. Appreciate that. Great story. Mike's got a ton of them.
Ben, the other piece to touch on is it's not only the fact that there might be fraudulent carriers who are impersonating legit carriers, but as I mentioned, if you have a data leak, what happens sometimes is there's good carriers out there who aren't aware that there's a leak or fraud going on. Someone might have hacked into their credential set from one of their drivers or what have you. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh, great. Ben's car is picking up from Chicago. It's going to Dallas at this address. They'll go in the system and change the delivery address so that when they send in a driver to do that, when they send in the legit driver, the driver sees it's been a change in delivery. And instead of delivering to the correct address where the transferee is located, they will deliver it to the fraudulent address where a fraudster is posing as someone who should be receiving the car. So it's not just people pretending that they're fraudulent carriers. It's people who have infiltrated carriers and they're changing information so an innocent driver doesn't realize that he's part of a fraud because he's being fed misinformation.
Oh, that's the way to do it right there. You get in the system and you just put your own address in there and, and that way, because you got the ID, you got all the things. And then,
Correct.
gosh, you could probably go in there and you could probably switch it right back too. That's super interesting. Rob's got a legitimate question. He says, maybe they brought a horse trailer. What if their car was a Mustang?
Right? Mustang, Bronco. I guess there could have been a lot of different ones that might have
been a lot of cars in that horse trailer.
Absolutely.
Maybe they misunderstood. Maybe the paperwork was a little, you didn't understand, Mike. Talk to the coordinator, Mike. Super interesting. Get in the comments here. Let us know what you think. Sharon says, thank you, Ben, for saying that. It is so important for the service providers to be able to speak to the customer in all verticals of their move. Sharon comes from corporate housing. Sharon, you're welcome. Appreciate you, Sharon. Thanks for getting in the comments. Get in the comments here with your comments, questions for Marco. Jack says, we do have the employee in contact with car transport company to set up the logistics. Good. Smart, Jack. That's probably why you've not had any fraud, Jack. But it is up 400%. That's crazy. Why, Marco? I mean, with all the technology we have, with all the fail safes it seems like that we have these days, I mean, how is this possible?
Well, unfortunately, Ben, I think the fail safes have not kept pace with the ability of the technology, right? So past fail safes, when you might be like, hey, I see that this driver or I see that this carrier is registered on this particular load board that I use, hey, they must be good. Or that old-fashioned thumb in the wind analysis, right? Hey, I spoke to this guy, Ben. He's the dispatcher. Seems like a cool guy. We got a lot in common. He's good. Let's go ahead and dispatch to him. That no longer cuts it anymore. And like I said, it is super important, in my opinion, that if you are a corporate, if you are a RMC, if you are a moving company, get with your provider and ask them, how do you vet carriers? And specifically, what do your systems look like so that they could demonstrate to you how they're trying to fight fraud against all these various means that I've explained, right? Fraudsters are always trying to be one step ahead of the game, and it's really going to take a concerted effort by people realizing that you need to have more of a analytic approach to defending against fraud these days than that thumb in the wind analysis.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I wonder if there's companies out there that are going to start to emerge, that are going to start stress testing some of these relocation service provider systems. We kind of live in this little weird ecosystem, this niche ecosystem, although I know companies like yours serve broad verticals, but we're expected to have certain amounts of data security. We're expected to have certain amounts of financial stability and things like that. But I haven't seen a lot of companies out there emerge or adopt ways to to really stress test that. So they say, how do you vet? And they're like, yeah, we vet. We know everybody we work with. We do X, Y, Z. And like the procurement person or the buyer's like, okay, cool. Next question. All right, cool. Next question. Like, they don't know.
That's right. Or, it's a boilerplate type of response, a common question on, RFPs or whatever. We have a strenuous vetting process, to make sure carriers are legit. That's no longer a sufficient answer, in my opinion. You have to get down into the weeds and explain exactly what a carrier needs to do to qualify to become part of your network. Do they have to prove that they have insurance? Do you have to make sure that the drivers and their equipment are listed underneath their COI? Do you have to see photos of their drivers, which they're going to give you, so you can pass that along to your customers as well? Do you need to make sure that their equipment has that MC number and everything else that's properly and professionally affixed, as opposed to something that's duct taped to a window or what have you? What does their equipment look like? It's a process to get these folks vetted, these days, and we have to go through this. This problem has become such a issue that we are starting to see now that actually other companies that are our competitors, right? But we're still in this space. We're realizing this is an issue and putting a bad reputation on the auto transport sector. We've actually started to come together to have discussions with each other to basically be able to identify bad players and issues that we've identified for the overall health of the industry. When you have, because this is a very, very competitive industry, but when you actually have companies coming together to say, all right, guys, let's kind of share some information, let's do something collectively so that we can give our customers a better experience in the space, that just speaks to how important it is in today's modern day of auto transport to make sure that you have a vetting process in place and actually cooperating with other folks in our space to make sure that our industry remains a safe and viable one that transferees can trust.
Yeah, I think that's really smart because and I've seen other segments kind of come together like this. I think it's important when you deal with things like standards. Whenever you deal with something like standards, you have to have a consensus. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? And I think you have to do that. And I think that it's important for industries to self-regulate before others regulate you, right? And people also forget that regulation, while we always, as business people want to say, oh, we don't like regulation. Well, regulation also keeps out a lot of bad actors, right? If we had more regulation in the moving industry, we'd keep out the quote unquote rogue actors, right? You talk to people in the moving industry, they talk about, the years of regulation being actually the heyday years, right? So, yeah, I think that's really cool, Marco, what you're talking about doing there. I am also curious, so get in the comments too if you have any other questions here for Marco about fraud and abuse. But I'm really curious. So I'm a fraudster. I go out there and I steal, a car, maybe a truckload of cars, right? Intercept a truck, maybe a truckload of cars, 6 cars or something on a thing. What do I do with it then? I mean, they each have a VIN number. I mean, what do I do? How do I knock it off, hypothetically, before the holidays?
Yeah, well, you know what? What's going to happen, Ben, is you're either going to get those cars and get them out of the country, right?
Oh.
And then sell them somewhere else. You're going to chop them up, right? The old chop shop, those are still there as well. So, I mean, that's what you're doing, right? When you're procuring those vehicles illegally, you're generally doing it because you have a means to profit from those, right? It's not like I'm stealing these because I want to drive these. It's a way for them to procure something that they're going to, steal through. So, it is unfortunately, as people ship valuable vehicles, that those are ones that generally get targeted, right? Those higher value cars are normally the ones that are getting targeted out there, and those are the ones that the fraudsters look for. But it is something that is growing, unfortunately, and that's why it's important to make sure that there is a stringent vetting process, which is clearly defined, in place. So, absolutely a must, in my opinion, in today's modern.
Jack's got a spot in Jersey over there to take care of a thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
Knows a guy over there.
Yep.
He had to.
Yep.
Sharon's going to drive him to Mexico. Everybody's got a plan. I like that.
Right. Well, that's what it is. Yeah.
Everyone's
absolutely.
got a plan. Jack's saying in our current mobility model, we trust the RMC as vetting. their supplier network part of our contract with them. That is why we outsource.
Yeah, makes sense, Jack. I mean, I know that's a common model. If you're an RMC, you should be having that conversation with your suppliers about what is in place to control fraud on their side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say this about that, right? I mean, the RMC model's been around for 40, 50 years. When you say cargo theft is up 400%, you're talking about a rapidly changing environment, a rapidly
Yep.
evolving environment. It's hard to keep up with that, right? And it's hard to keep up with all of the trends and compliance and vetting and best practices and every vertical. I mean, RMCs are out there selling upwards of 20 different service verticals and managing those sometimes globally. And it's really hard to stay up on all that stuff. So, yeah, I feel you, Jack, and that's a really good way to pass the accountability on to them and say that's your job. But ultimately, I think we also have a duty of care to our transferee who just lost their Mercedes because they, handed the wrong guy the keys.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the risk though to the RMC is that imagine that experience if an EVP not only has an issue with getting their car delivered, but it's been found out that it's been fraudulently stolen and that car's gone now, right? You talk about ways that you lose accounts. Again, that's why I can't stress enough that the importance for RMCs to make sure that carriers in their network, because the same way that corporate puts trust in the RMC is putting trust in their network. But I think you need to do a little bit more due diligence outside of just having someone tell you, hey, we have 15,000 trusted carriers in our network.
Yeah.
What does that mean, right? How are you identifying them as a trusted carrier?
Yeah, I think the idea about also like claiming so many trusted carriers, quote unquote, and actually being a bit of a beige flag is kind of interesting. I I remember a story when I was in Detroit actually, and we had a car shipment to Mexico, and it was for it was for a client, and we shipped the car, and it got boosted by the cartel. They stole the cartel, stole the car. I guess that's why they call it the cartel, right? I mean, they got it, but yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do, right? You just file a claim and chalk it up. So, oh man, but then when you think about the cost of insurance, therefore the cost of doing business, you think about the amount of insurance coverage that you know freight companies are having to carry now, the cost of these bonds, the cost that our RMC customers and stuff are of the insurance that they're requiring us to carry. Right? We talked about data security, we talked about financial stability, but the insurances that they're asked to carry. I mean, I had an RMC. I mean, we're a recruiting firm, and I had an RMC I tried to do business with that wanted me to carry $1 million rider, and I'm like that'd be a hell of a lot of paper cuts that I'd have to get, to file $1 million claim. I'm not running a forklift over here. I'm just a recruiter, and so it's driving up the cost of business while at the same time our clients are always forcing prices down.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the scary part on the insurance piece that you brought up, Ben, is that you think if you're an auto hauler that if you have an issue with even if the car isn't stolen, right? If there's damage to a car, a modern day insurance company, and there's one specifically, I'm not going to mention it, but if there is a claim that's filed, and if that driver or that piece of equipment isn't specifically listed under that policy, they're going to deny the claim.
Yep.
So then it falls back on to the auto transport company, who then is going to say, well, listen, it's not our fault. We're going to deny this claim. And again, it's a bad experience that then trickles all the way down to the transferee. So,
Yep.
for us is we're hyper vigilant to make sure that every driver is legitimate with their licensing, and every piece of equipment that we're dispatching is physically listed on an insurance policy before we allow it to go pick up a car.
Wow. That sounds like a whole lot of compliance right then and there, though. Listing
It's a
all
lot of
those
work.
that's a lot of paperwork.
But we've made the commitment to do it. It was certainly some pain to go through as we were asking our teams and our internal dispatch groups to do extra things. but everyone understands the benefit it means not only to our growth, but to the security and the fact that we want our name to be trusted when we're shipping cars. So, well worth the pain and suffering that was put in to make those changes, but now we're reaping the rewards of that. I think we have a great reputation in the space as being a leader, especially concerned about these type of things, because again, it's ultimately what is that transferee's experience and how can we ensure that we're transporting their car in the safest way possible to not break that barrier of trust.
All right, Marco, now that we've sufficiently scared the hell out of everybody, you want to play a game, have some fun?
Love it. Let's do it.
Let's do it, right? Let's lighten things up a little bit, okay? Let's have a little fun here with the game we call Overrated, Underrated. Marco, do you know how to play the game?
I'm pretty sure. I think you're just gonna, hit me up with something, and I'll tell you whether it's overrated or underrated, and give you my professional opinion why, my friend.
Yeah, you're very close. You're very close. It seems very straightforward, okay? But there's a twist, okay? So I'm going to give you a topic. You're going to tell me if it's either overrated or underrated. Those are your two options. Don't deviate. Don't get cute. Don't overthink it, okay? Some people try to overthink it, okay? Not looking for trailblazers here, all right? No innovation necessary when it comes to overrated, underrated. And then the second thing, I will tell you if you are correct.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
it's highly subjective, okay?
Ooh, all right. The court of Ben Cross. I like this. Let's do it.
Yeah, there you go. At least I get to be right here, and then I get to go home, and then it's all out the window. Overrated, underrated. First one up, job titles.
Overrated.
Ooh, overrated, huh? Now, it's easy for you to say that. You got a C-suite title. Marco, defend your position.
What? Here's the thing. I have a C-suite title, but that doesn't mean that I'm still not capable of getting down in the weeds, right? So I just don't like someone saying, "Oh, he's a C-suite guy. You can't bring this to him." I'm still on the phone making, connection calls with, clients. I've probably grown up in the atmosphere, Ben, throughout my career that everyone does everything to help everyone out. So I don't want the fact that I got a title like that to deter people from feeling they could reach out to me if they need to talk to me about something.
Yeah. Yeah, and conversely, I think there's a lot of times, I'll speak about my own career. There was times in my career where I felt like if I just had this title, I could do this, or I would have the license to lead in a way, or I'd have the license to make something so, or I'd have the license to make a decision, or customers would call me back if I had this title. And, I think that sometimes that's a limiting belief that we put in our own head. I'm not saying it's not always true,
Yeah.
but I think that's a limiting belief sometimes we put in our head. This is one of those funny things where if you have it, you say it's not a big deal. If you don't have it, you say it is a big deal. You talk to leaders. No leader is going to tell you the job titles, make the person, right? But not having it's, feels like a big deal. I knew it felt like forever for me to get that manager title. That was a big deal for me, that step in my career. Really put that on a pedestal. I do like what you're saying, though, as far as not feeling like you're above any work. I think that's the worst thing we can do in life or in work, where we start to feel like we're above something.
Yeah, I just don't like stereotyping someone because they have a title, right? Maybe someone that just has, a title of, hey, I'm a customer service rep. They could be more knowledgeable about the space and what's going on in the day to day than someone with that C-level title, right? So sometimes those people with less of a title are actually the ones that know what's going on.
Oh my gosh, you're so right about that. I work with law firms. The paralegals are the ones that do everything. Those are the ones that really know everything inside and out. You go to a moving company, the coordinators, those are the ones that really do everything.
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah. All right, 1 point for Marco. All right,
let's go. Going. Yeah.
Let's go. Dolly can attest that. She's got your back there. There you go. All right, next one up here. Listening to respond.
That is rated.
Overrated. All right, explain.
All right. So this is something I personally struggle with, is that I feel like there's a difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. I often find myself sometimes, just because I'm excited, right, or I want to make a counterpoint,
Yeah.
cutting people off before they've had an opportunity to get their point across. And a lot of times I say you need to understand what they're bringing up as opposed to just responding because you're in that defensive mode. So I think a lot of us should try and listen to understand why certain points are being made, as opposed to just, nope, that's wrong, this is why, without having an understanding of what that other person's point of view is.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I went through this in that same point in my career when I wanted to be a manager. I was constantly blurting out the answer. I was constantly trying to convince people how smart I was. And it's annoying as shit.
I still do it to this day. Is I
Yeah.
have to stop myself from talking up. I mean, people who know me know that I'm a wee bit Italian, so it comes with that. Is the hands are going to be out of control at times. I'm going to have a loud tenor to my voice, but I try and make a conscious effort to let people finish their thought, so I could process what they're trying to communicate to me, and then give a response, as opposed to cutting them off and not giving them a chance to actually make their point.
Yeah, it's so good. I want to give people a couple tips. Can I share a couple tips on this that I've learned
Love
from
it. Let's hear it.
struggling with that. I struggle with this too, so I'm so happy you brought this up. People can tell when you're listening to interject. Like you kind of almost physically see them like jumping in, and you can see like the eyes moving and the mouth start to move, and they're like already formulating, and you can see they're totally disengaged with the second half of your point, and they're just already talking, right? So that's annoying as hell. And then the second thing that I do in order to stop myself from doing that is I'll take my finger and I'll just like touch my leg with it or touch the table with it or something, and I'll put it down. And this is my point that I'm going to make, and I just put it to the side. And that allows me to disengage, because the thing I'm trying not to do is forget what I was going to say. So now I've taken it and I put it over here, so now I can listen again to what you're saying. So I'm going to be fully engaged with you until you're done, and then I'm gonna forget it, but I'm gonna remember my finger's over here. And why the hell's my finger? Oh yeah, that's right. I had the thing I was gonna tell you. So that's a way for me to compartmentalize it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Totally get why you do that.
The problem is, well, I can only have 5 fingers, so it's better you better wrap it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. You're limited to the amount of points you can put down on there. Yeah, I get it.
No, this
Yeah.
is a great one. This is a really good one for early career people. I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah, total. Can we give more than 1 point to Marco? No? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. 1 point for Marco. All right, let's go here. We're moving around here. Let's get it back in here. All right, overrated, underrated, dress codes.
This is going to be controversial, but I'm
I
going
love
with
it.
underrated.
Wow.
Going with
You are.
underrated.
You just got canceled. How did it feel?
I got Ben. I gotta say though, Ben. Normally when I see you around, man, you are dressed to the T's, my friend. I mean, that is like the calling card, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I see you out at industry events, it's like, what's Ben got on today, type of thing. So I understand casual movement, and I'm not
Uh-huh.
necessarily saying you need to be on suits when you're traveling on, airplanes, but I think there's something sometimes to, dressing up a little bit. It might be for me personally, it's just mentally that kind of gets me in the right, space when I'm talking with clients or having conversations. I am known to have a little bit of a shoe fetish as well, for those folks who know me. So complete and utter transparency on that. But I'm going with underrated on this one, my friend.
I love it, dude. And I always love your shoes. I remember you had like a leather kind of a cap toe with like a denim or some kind of a jacquard kind of upper to it. I remember that set. I wondered how they wore, over time. But they're yeah, that's no, you always have some great shoes, and you're always very well dressed as well. I think thank you for all the kind words as well. Yeah, I agree with you. We need to really bring back a certain level of decorum. And you know what it is? It's not for the people around you. It's for you. I mean, it's for the rest of us too, please, for the love. But like, it's also for you, like, because if you look good, you play good, and if you play good, you perform well, and life is good. I tell you what, one of the biggest life hacks that I had in my career was dressing nice. Because before I ever opened my mouth, I had the benefit of the doubt. And if you can give yourself a couple of points on the board before you ever step on the field, you might as well take the free money. So I always invested in what I wore. Also, to be honest with you, as a very large guy, You know, I'm like, if I don't really like have a good tight haircut, if I don't have a tailored look to myself, I can very easily look sloppy, very easily, you know, and then I'm dead, and then I'm done, right? So I think it's really important. I think the problem is there's been a little bit of a gap. There was a, you know, casual Fridays become casual every day, and there was about, you know, 15, 20 years of that in the workforce, to the point where like people's parents forgot how to like do it, so now they can't even teach it. So now you have a generation of young people whose parents don't even know how to dress, how to dress like in business attire. And so it's like not even something that's instilled, you know what I mean? I was fortunate my parents, you know, had jobs where they wore a, you know, coat and tie. Not all the time, and of course over time it you know, it lessened. But there's a time and a place where you got to get up for that conference or that dinner or whatever, and you got to have that in your bag. So, yeah, man, I totally agree. Dress codes are important. Standards are important, you know. So, yeah, another point for Marco, dude. You're killing it, man.
Let's
How's
go.
it feel? You're on a heater, man.
I'm feeling good right now,
All right,
right? I
feeling
mean,
good.
so far, yeah.
Hold on,
Yeah.
we got some people checking in here. Just, I think this is important to recognize these people. Karen says, agree, Ben. Yes, yes, you're always, yeah. Charles B says, Ben is always dressed great. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you very much. Jack Taylor says, shout out to the coordinators. Yeah, shout out to the coordinators, the unsung heroes.
Big time. Big
Very
time.
cool. All right, let's go. Number 4, overrated, underrated, the Green Bay Packers. Titletown. Uh-oh.
The single most overrated thing you could possibly put out there, my friend. I'm
Wow.
I'm sorry. I'm showing Chicago bias. It's a thorn in my side. I don't have a lot of room to talk right now because it's been one-sided in the rivalry, but I am not a Packers fan, my friend. Not a Packers fan.
Wow. Um, this is interesting. All right, producer Samara, what is the NFL's all-time win record? I want to know. I want to know where the Packers rank in the all-time, because I feel like they're pretty consistently good. So I mean, I want to know, and they've been in a division with, you know, the Lions for so long. I want to know. I want to know how many they got some cupcakes on their schedule here.
Green Bay Packers have the most wins, 810 in
810
NFL history.
wins in NFL history. They have the most wins in NFL history. I just pulled that out of my rear end.
They're also one of the oldest franchises,
It's a
right? So
repository of
they've
information.
had more
What
time.
about
But
percentage
yeah,
wise? Win
yeah.
percentage. Look it up by win percent. Highest win percentage in NFL history. Listen, Marco, I don't love the Packers. I'll be honest. I spent my 40th birthday at Lambeau watching them beat my Cowboys in comeback fashion. You know, Aaron Rodgers can just walk, you know, take a long walk off a short pier as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, golly, the people are nice, but I overrated is tough. Where they at win percentage wise, Samara?
57.
No, but where do they rank? They rank number 2 win percentage wise. Who's number 1?
I don't know if this is right.
Just say
Dallas Cowboys?
Dallas Cowboys number 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was probably the
Hello,
Cowboys, right? Those
hello,
teams in the
whoa,
'70s and the '80s,
whoa,
and even then in the
hello. In
'90s.
the
Yeah,
90s when they won 3
yeah,
chips.
with the triplets, absolutely. Yep,
Oh man. So you say overrated the
I think
Packers,
they're
huh?
overrated right now. I think that Jordan Love is a question mark. I think they're trying to retool. I think they had a good run last year, but I think they're going to be challenged this year. I think they're going to be challenged this year.
Okay. I, I have so much respect for going from Favre to Rodgers to Love, and drafting Love when you had Rodgers there, knowing that Rodgers was such a diva and he was going to throw a complete fit. You know, I mean, having a great starting quarterback in the league is just the most important thing, and they took no years off. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah. I
I,
like I said, respect the franchise. Been a thorn in my side for many years, but I just think they're overrated, my friend.
All right, people in the comments here, the Packers are so overrated. Evan says that. Oh my gosh, the most likable, unlikable person in the world, Evan. Love you, man. Andrea, go Pack, go. All right. Here we
So
go.
just for those of you that don't know, Andrea is one of our team members in the relocation team here. She is amazing at what she does. The only flaw she really has is she has this sick obsession with the Green Bay Packers. So I'm not surprised that that's how she's responding to this one.
Sick obsession.
Yeah.
Sharon says overrated. Rob's talking about my Dallas Cowboys win percentage. Must not count the playoffs. Yeah, thanks, Charles. Been a rough 25 years. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think they can be. I don't think they're overrated. I don't think they're overrated. I don't know. I don't think I can give you a point for that one, Marco. I'll be honest. Let's keep it moving though. Let's keep it going. Let's see if he redeems himself here. Last one up. Overrated, underrated. The Bears. The Bears.
All right, hear me out now, okay?
I'm hearing.
The Bears are underrated, and I'm going to tell you why. For the first time in a long time, they actually have addressed the root problem, the offensive line. We've gone out and we've signed some key stud free agents. We've used draft accordingly, and I think they're actually going to be able to protect Caleb Williams and give him some options. The other thing I love, too, is I think they got the steal of the draft. Luther Burden III from Missouri, I think is the
You sound like Mel Kiper just now, by the way. I loved it.
Those of you who know me also know there's a little bias here because I have two kids who attend the University of Missouri right now. So MIZ to all the fans out there. But let's see if I'm right or not. I think Luther Burden III is going to be the surprise of the draft. They're going to protect Caleb Williams. He's a wide receiver.
Wide receiver, okay.
I think the Bears are going to make the playoffs, and I think the Bears are going to have a better record than the Packers this year.
Bears coming out of probably the most competitive division in football. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't know, the NFC East is pretty competitive, but it's up there, right? I mean, you got the Lions are fierce right now.
Lions are awesome. All three other teams made the playoffs last year, right? Minnesota and Green Bay. But I think the Bears have made the right adjustments on the offseason, and I think we're ready to go. I'm excited this year as a Bears fan.
2 questions. Who's your coach?
So our coach came from Detroit, right? We got the offensive coordinator over at Detroit. He's now the head coach of Chicago because we let our coach go. And I think he's going to have the right mindset to go in there and work with the receivers and work with the offense. So, he's the guy.
Okay. What do we know his name? I don't know his name. Who's the coach of the Bears? Look it up. Who's the coach of the... Hold on. So Samara's got this. Our producer's got this. New coach. You get a pass. He hadn't coached a game yet. You get a pass.
Just new hire this year.
Johnson.
Yep.
Johnson. Okay. Ben Johnson. All right.
Offensive mindset guru of the Lions. He's the Bears head coach now, man.
Okay. Second question. Is Caleb Williams the guy?
I think he has the opportunity to be the guy. He's a quirky guy. But I think this is the make or break year for Caleb. I think he's got the skill set. I think his problem is that offensive line was Swiss cheese. So we're gonna find out, my friend. I think he's the guy. I think he can do it.
Yeah. He could be like a little kind of a Russell Wilson, kind of quirky, kind of.
Absolutely.
Has some
definitely
good years
a quirky guy for sure. Yeah.
All right. We'll be looking out for those Bears. I think you make some great points there. We're giving Marco a point for those Bears. We're gonna root for those Bears.
Bear down.
Bear down. There you go. Bear down. Yeah, very good. Look at this. People, look at Evan. Evan, are you a Bears fan, buddy? Look at this. I'm learning something new every day. Look at that. This is great, Marco. It's always a blast seeing you, chatting with you. I learned a lot of stuff today. This has been really cool. Do you maybe just want to leave us with a final thought before we sign off today?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those topics, Ben, that is no longer, in my opinion, a head in the sand. I think we have to admit that this is a viable concern out there. And again, I just think that if you are having some way a transferee involved with moving their vehicle, you want to make sure that the providers you have in your network are realizing this and taking the proper protocol to protect them and you, right, as much as possible. So, I definitely think that we're leading the way in the space, and we're looking forward not only to make, the safe space for us and our customers, but working with our other providers as well to make sure that the industry as a whole, people aren't worried about shipping their cars.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Super cool. Marco, thanks so much for letting us know about all of the fraud and whatnot, and your company is really cool. Also, don't forget to win the ultimate trip to Washington, D.C. Go to glomo.com/DC. Win a trip for two, airfare, accommodations, suite tickets, field passes to the Washington Commanders game of your choice. With me, it'll be a lot of fun. I'll see you in DC. Make sure to enter today. We're going to be closing that soon. Thanks so much, Marco. Thanks, everybody. Wouldn't have a show without you out there. Appreciate y'all. See you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Ben. Pleasure, my friend.